My husband cheated on me with my best friend and sent me their wedding invitation, and I took revenge. Chapter 1. A crack in the mirror. Tom and I were the couple everyone envied. We met in college, a classic story of boy meets girl, falls head over heels. We were inseparable. Married young, bought a charming little house with a white picket fence, talked about starting a family. I loved him with every fiber of my being. I trusted him implicitly. He was my rock, my confidant, my best friend. Or so I thought. One Tuesday afternoon, while he was at work, I decided to surprise him with lunch. I went to his office, only to find his car wasn't there. I called, but he didn't answer. I went back home, a little annoyed, but mostly just wanting to see him. That's when I saw it. His phone, left charging on the kitchen counter. A notification popped up. Sarah's name. My best friend. My sister in all but blood. My heart did a little flutter. I shouldn't snoop. But my fingers moved on their own. The message was short, but it was like a punch to the gut. I can't wait to be yours forever. My world tilted on its axis. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the floor was falling out from under me. I read the message again and again, hoping it was a mistake, a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It was real. I confronted Tom the moment he walked in the door. He looked surprised, then guilty, then finally just resigned. He didn't deny it. He couldn't even look me in the eye. He mumbled an apology, said it was a mistake, a drunken one-night stand. He swore it wouldn't happen again. But the damage was done. The trust, the foundation of our relationship, was shattered. I felt like a fool, so blind, so trusting, oblivious to their betrayal. I thought about Sarah, my confidant, the one I shared all my secrets with. How could she do this to me? How could they both do this to me? The pain was a physical atch, a constant weight on my chest. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. My world was unraveling. Chapter 3. The salt in the wound weeks turned into a blur of tears, sleepless nights, and endless replays of happy memories, now tainted with suspicion. I went through the motions, pretending everything was fine, but inside I was crumbling. Then the mail came. A thick, fancy, embossed envelope. It was their wedding invitation. Tom and Sarah. Getting married. And they had the audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall, to invite me to their wedding. To their wedding. The nerve, the cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was like they were twisting the knife, rubbing salt into my already gaping wounds. I stared at the invitation, my hands trembling, tears welling up in my eyes. I wanted to tear it to shreds, to burn it to ashes, to obliterate it from existence. But I didn't. I kept it. As a reminder of their betrayal, of their deceit, of their utter lack of respect for me, and, most importantly, as fuel for my burning desire for revenge. Chapter 4. The Whispers of Vengeance. The invitation became my obsession. I carried it with me everywhere I went, a constant, tangible reminder of their treachery. I looked at it every day, studying every detail, every word, every flourish. The date, the time, the location etched into my memory. Tom and Sarah. Soon to be Mr. and Mrs. The thought churned my stomach, a cocktail of nausea and rage. But it also ignited something within me, a dark, simmering determination. A purpose, a reason to drag myself out of bed each morning. Revenge. It whispered in my ear, a siren's call promising sweet justice. I started to plot, to strategize. I needed to make them pay. I needed to make them suffer the way I was suffering. I needed to obliterate their perfect day, just like they had obliterated my perfect life. Chapter 5. Metamorphosis. I knew I couldn't go to the wedding as myself, the heartbroken, betrayed wife. They would expect tears, weakness, a dramatic scene. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I needed a disguise, a mask to hide behind, a new persona to embody. I needed to become someone else, someone stronger, someone more confident, someone capable of enacting my revenge. I went on a shopping spree, a mission to transform myself. I bought a new dress, a sleek, black, figure-hugging number that made me feel powerful, almost dangerous. I got a new hairstyle, a sophisticated updo that made me look a taller, more imposing. I experimented with makeup, a dramatic, smoky eye that hinted at secrets and hidden depths. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of my old self, but amplified, reborn. I was no longer the naive, trusting woman Tom had betrayed. I was someone new, someone to be reckoned with. Chapter 6: Infiltration. The day of the wedding arrived, a day that had been circled on my calendar for months, not with joy, but with anticipation, a cold, calculated anticipation. I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread, a nervous flutter in my stomach, like a trapped bird beating its wings against my ribs. I was ready, but I was also terrified. What if my plan failed? What if they saw through my disguise? What if I made a fool of myself? I took a deep, steadying breath and reminded myself why I was doing this. For me, for my broken heart, for my stolen happiness. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them get away with it. I drove to the venue, a sprawling, opulent estate, surrounded by acres of manicured gardens, a monument to wealth and privilege. The parking lot was a sea of luxury cars, guests milling about, dressed in their finest, laughing and chatting, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. I parked my car, took one last deep breath, and walked towards the grand entrance, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. Chapter 7: The Gathering of Vipers. I slipped into the reception hall, a glittering, cavernous space, even more extravagant than I had imagined. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the high ceilings, marble floors gleamed underfoot, and floral arrangements overflowed from every surface. The air hummed with the murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of champagne flutes, the soft strains of a string quartet. I scanned the crowd, searching for Tom and Sarah, the architects of my misery. I spotted them near the bar, surrounded by a throng of well-wishers, basking in the glow of their happiness. They looked sickeningly pleased with themselves. Too pleased. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a surge of white-hot anger. How dare they be so happy, after what they did to me? I moved through the crowd, a silent observer, a phantom presence, watching, listening, gathering information, like a predator stalking its prey. Chapter 8: The Charade of Love. The music shifted, a subtle cue that it was time for the ceremony to begin. Guests began to filter into the adjoining ballroom, a vast, chapel-like space, decorated with even more flowers, even more candles, even more ostentatious displays of wealth. I found a spot near the back, a strategic vantage point, where I could see everything, yet remain unseen. Tom stood at the altar, looking strangely nervous, his smile tight, his eyes darting around the room. Then, Sarah appeared, a vision in white, her dress a cloud of lace and tulle, her face radiant with what I knew was a carefully constructed facade. She smiled at Tom, a practiced, saccharine smile, and he smiled back, a hollow echo of genuine affection. It was all so fake, so staged, so utterly repulsive. The priest began to speak, droning on about love, commitment, and the sanctity of marriage, words that felt like a mockery, a cruel joke. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, trying to contain the fury that threatened to erupt. Chapter 9: The Unveiling. The priest reached the part of the ceremony where he asked if anyone objected. My heart pounded in my ears, a deafening drumbeat. This was it. My moment. The culmination of weeks of planning, of simmering rage, of burning desire for revenge. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, my movements drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The silence was immediate, absolute. All eyes were on me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. I object, I said, my voice clear, strong, and I object, I said. My voice clear, strong and unwavering, cutting through the hushed reverence of the room. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Tom and Sarah's faces paled, their carefully constructed smiles crumbling like sandcastles before a rising tide. The guests murmured, their whispers like the rustling of leaves in a sudden gust of wind. I walked towards the altar, each step measured, deliberate, my gaze fixed on Tom and Sarah, their discomfort a palpable thing, a sweet taste on my tongue. I reached the altar, standing just a few feet from them, close enough to see the fear in their eyes, the beads of sweat forming on their foreheads. I looked at Tom, my ex-husband, the man I had loved and trusted with all my heart. "You betrayed me," I said, my voice low, but carrying across the silent room. "You lied to me. You broke your vows. You broke me." I turned to Sarah, my former best friend, the woman I had considered my sister. "And you," I said, my voice laced with ice. "You were supposed to be my friend, my sister. But you're nothing but a backstabber, a traitor, a viper in my bosom." Chapter 10. The exposure. I pulled out my phone, the screen displaying the damning evidence, the text messages, the photos, the intimate details of their sordid affair. I held it up, letting the light illuminate the screen, projecting their betrayal for all to see. The guests gasped again, their whispers turning into murmurs of shock and disgust. Some of them looked at Tom and Sarah with open condemnation, their faces contorted with disapproval. Others looked at me with pity, their eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and morbid curiosity. Tom tried to interrupt, to stammer out some pathetic excuse, but I silenced him with a look. "Don't even try," I said, my voice cutting through his feeble protests. "Don't insult my intelligence with your lies. I have proof. Here it is, for everyone to see." I scrolled through the messages, reading aloud the most damning excerpts, the sweet nothings, the secret rendezvous, the promises of a future together, a future that was built on my pain, on my shattered dreams. Chapter 11. The Unraveling. The room descended into chaos. Guests were talking amongst themselves, their voices rising in a cacophony of judgment and speculation. Some were taking sides, whispering their opinions about who was right and who was wrong. Others were simply trying to leave, eager to escape the unfolding drama. Tom and Sarah were surrounded, trapped in a circle of condemnation. They looked like cornered animals, their eyes darting around, searching for an escape, but there was none. Their carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Sarah started to cry, her tears a pathetic attempt to garner sympathy, but no one was buying it. Tom just stood there, his face ashen, his body trembling, the picture of a man caught in his own web of deceit. I watched them, my heart filled with a cold sense of satisfaction. They were finally getting what they deserved. Their perfect day was ruined, their lies exposed, their reputations shattered. I had taken my revenge, and it was sweet. Chapter 12. The Reckoning. But even as I watched their downfall, a strange emptiness began to creep into my heart. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to dissipate, leaving behind a hollow edge. I had gotten my revenge, but it didn't bring me joy. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't heal the wounds. It just left me feeling empty. I turned and walked away, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see their faces, their tears, their despair. I had done what I had set out to do, and now it was over. I stepped out of the grand estate, into the cool night air, and took a deep breath. The stars were out, twinkling in the dark sky, indifferent to the drama that had just unfolded. I got into my car and drove away, leaving the chaos behind me. Chapter 13. The Aftermath. The drive home was long and silent. I replayed the events of the evening in my mind, the confrontation, the exposure, the chaos. I had wanted to hurt them, to make them suffer, and I had succeeded. But now that it was over, I felt nothing, just a profound sense of emptiness. I arrived home, the house quiet and still. I went inside, changed out of my dress, and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on the couch, staring out the window, at the dark, silent world outside. I thought about Tom, about Sarah, about the life I had lost. I had wanted revenge, But what I really wanted was my old life back, the life before the betrayal, the life before the pain. But that was impossible. That life was gone, shattered into a million pieces. Chapter 4: Through the long road, the next few months were difficult. I went through a range of emotions: grief, anger, sadness, despair. I struggled to sleep, to eat, to function. I felt like a part of me had died. I went to therapy, talked about my feelings, tried to make sense of what had happened. It was a long and painful process, but slowly, gradually, I started to heal. I started to rebuild my life piece by piece. I focused on my work, on my friends, on my hobbies. I rediscovered passions I had forgotten about. I started to smile again, to laugh again, to feel again. Chapter 15: A glimmer of hope. One day, I ran into an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years. We talked, we laughed, we reminisced about old times. He asked me about Tom, about the wedding. I told him the truth, the whole story. He was shocked, of course, but he was also supportive. He listened, he offered words of comfort, he made me feel like I wasn't alone. He asked me out for coffee, and I said yes. It was just coffee, just a friendly chat, but it felt good to be out, to be with someone, to feel like I was moving on. Chapter 16: Moving forward, I never spoke to Tom or Sarah again. I heard through mutual friends that they had gotten divorced shortly after the wedding. Their relationship, built on lies and betrayal, couldn't withstand the scrutiny of the public eye. I didn't feel any satisfaction at their misfortune. I didn't feel anything at all. They were just ghosts from my past, a painful reminder of what I had lost, but also a reminder of how strong I had become. I had survived. I had rebuilt my life. I had found my own happiness not in revenge, but in myself. I learned to forgive, not for them, but for me. I learned to let go of the past and embrace the future. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I was finally free.
I never wanted to go back to that house, but when my mother passed away, I had no choice, and the moment I stepped inside, the air felt heavy, like the walls were holding a secret, and maybe they were because my father had built this house before he disappeared. And no one ever found him, and I was only 6 when it happened, and I barely remembered him, just flashes of his deep voice and strong hands. But my mother never spoke about him, and every time I asked, she would change the subject or tell me he was gone, and now that she was gone too, I was alone, and I had questions that no one could answer, and the house smelled of dust and old wood, and every floorboard creaked under my feet as I walked through the empty rooms. But when I reached the basement door, I stopped because I had never been allowed inside when I was a child, and I remembered how my mother used to lock it every night, even though she never explained why, and my heart started beating faster as I turned the doorknob, half expecting it to be locked, but it wasn't, and when I pushed the door open, a cold draft hit my face, making me shiver, and the stairs were steep and narrow, leading down into darkness, but I grabbed a flashlight and took slow steps, feeling my stomach twist with unease because something didn't feel right, and when I reached the bottom, I saw nothing but old furniture covered in white sheets, dusty boxes stacked against the walls, and a heavy silence that made my skin crawl, and I walked around, running my fingers over the boxes, wondering what secrets my mother had hidden, and that's when I noticed it, the small metal handle on the floor, half hidden under an old rug, and my breath caught in my throat because it looked like a trapdoor. Something I had never seen before, and I hesitated, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear, so I grabbed the handle and pulled, feeling the wood resist for a moment before it creaked open, revealing a dark hole beneath the basement. floor and a ladder leading down into even deeper darkness, and my hands were shaking as I aimed my flashlight down, my heart pounding in my chest. But what I saw made my blood turn cold. There was another room down there, hidden under the house, with a small bed, a wooden chair, and chains bolted to the wall, and my stomach twisted as I stepped onto the ladder, climbing down into the secret space, my mind racing with 100 questions. But the air down here was different, thick and musty, and it smelled like something had been trapped for a long time. And I moved the flashlight around, my heart hammering against my ribs, and that's when I saw the message, scratched into the wall with something sharp, the letters uneven but clear enough to make my breath stop. It said, "Help me," and my throat went dry, my legs felt weak, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be here anymore, but I had to know the truth. So I opened one of the old boxes stacked in the corner, and inside, I found something that made my skin crawl: children's clothes, small shoes, old toys, and a notebook filled with drawings, but not happy ones, because these were pictures of a dark room, a bed with chains, and a tall figure standing in the doorway. And my hands trembled as I turned the pages, and then I saw the last drawing, a face with hollow eyes and a wide, twisted smile, and underneath, written in shaky letters, were the words, "He lives under the house," and my breath caught in my throat, and suddenly the silence around me felt deafening, like the house itself was holding its breath, and that's when I heard it, a soft sound, like a whisper, coming from the shadows in the corner of the room, and I turned my flashlight quickly, but there was nothing there. Just darkness stretching beyond the edges of the light. But then, I heard it again, closer this time, a slow, shallow breath, like someone was hiding just out of sight, and my chest tightened. My fingers gripped the flashlight so hard they ached, and I took a step back, my mind screaming at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. And then the whispering stopped, and the silence was worse than the sound, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears. And I could feel my own heartbeat pounding against my ribs. But just as I was about to turn and climb back up the ladder, something moved in the darkness, a shape shifting in the shadows, something tall, too tall, with long, thin limbs and a face that wasn't quite human. And before I could even scream, I saw its eyes, two hollow black pits staring straight at me, unblinking, empty and endless, and my body locked up, my breath hitched in my throat, and then it moved, stepping forward with slow, deliberate motions, its bony fingers twitching as it reached toward me, and that's when I found my voice, and I turned and climbed the ladder so fast my hand slipped, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode, and as I reached the top, I slammed the trapdoor shut, my hands shaking as I scrambled to push the heavy boxes over it, my entire body trembling with fear. But then I heard it, the scratching, slow, deliberate, coming from beneath the floor, followed by a soft, whispering voice that sent chills down my spine. "You found me," and my breath hitched, my vision blurred with panic, and I ran up the basement stairs, out of the house, into the night, my legs barely carrying me as I reached my car and fumbled for the keys. But before I could even start the engine, I looked up and saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The front door was open, wide open, and standing there, in the doorway, was a tall, thin figure with hollow eyes and a wide, twisted smile, and I don't remember screaming. I don't remember how I got away. All I know is that I drove as fast as I could, without looking back, without stopping, and I never returned to that house again. But even now, even in my new home, far away from that cursed place, I still hear it. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, when everything is quiet, the scratching, the whispering, and the voice, so soft, so close, you found me, and then one night I woke up in bed, my heart pounding, sweat dripping down my face. And I told myself it was just a nightmare, just my mind playing tricks on me, but when I turned my head, I saw it standing in the corner of my bedroom, the tall, thin figure, smiling, waiting, whispering, "You can't run."